All right, everybody, welcome to the circle. My name is Brian Piergrossi. Really grateful to have Steve Torma with us. Hello, Steve. Thanks for being here. Um, yeah, I could introduce you and say a few things about you, but maybe start off first, Steve, just kind of sharing what you do, what you've been doing, what you're passionate about.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I moved down here to be part of Earth Haven Eco Village, which is an intentional community. We just turned 30 last year, and I grew up in a big Catholic family in northeastern Ohio, little 3-acre farm, and active in the church and all of that. And a lot of the beautiful imprints of that stuck with me. The desire for community, the desire for connection to the land, uh, spirituality, and so forth. And so, after I shed the parts of it that I didn't like, I kind of became my imprint that I created as an adult, and had a realization very early on that for my own healing and growth, I wanted to be part of a healing, conscious, earthy, heartful community for my own healing, for my own flourishing. And it also became clear to me that this was a big part of what my life's work was. That came to me kind of in my mid 20s, and I'm in my mid 60s now. So it's been about 40 years of very conscious seeking of community for my own richness, as well as for uh, a big part of my understanding of my service to the world.
And Steve's really, I think he's really known, particularly in the Asheville region, for helping people communicate with each other as a mediator, helping people understand each other, helping people to feel seen and heard and relationship with each other. And I think one of the few benefits of the whole COVID era was I think that got you on online on Zoom. So now people can connect with you from other parts of by the way, Steve is maybe at this point the only person that I'm connected with that does not own a cell phone. So congratulations to you on that. He's not a social media user either. You have to send him an email if you want to, or the psychic telepathic communication. But
uh,
uh but he's yeah, Annie and I did some sessions with Steve when we were first getting together in our relationship, and he helped us with our communication. So it's really a blessing to have you here, Steve, and to share this time with you. So the format that we've been following now is I'll just kind of ask Steve some questions and kind of give him a chance to reflect. You guys can, if you have stuff that you want to share in the chat that we want to come back to later. I apologize last time I got so into what was happening. I didn't check the chat, but this time I promise I will check the chat. And so we'll have a chance to connect with Steve for the first part, and then the second part we'll open it up for you guys to interact and ask questions and engage and have a full dialogue.
mhm.
Yeah. So Steve sent me a few topics that he wanted to make sure we touch on. I guess the one thing I wanted to ask you for starters is just are you noticing themes right now that kind of common themes that people are struggling with that you're working with that are new or they're more prevalent than they used to be, or do you find it's just the same, it's consistent themes that throughout your decades of working that are pretty much the same as they've always been?
I would say it's mostly the same, but accentuated
Yeah.
by the cultural milieu that we're in,
Hmm.
um, but grounded in the many of the basic aspects, dysfunctions of our culture that get aggravated in times like this. Um, like what would those be? It would be a sense of separation from each other, sense of isolation, separation, fear. I'm not like a rabid socialist or communist, but I certainly have a lot of critiques of competitive capitalist economics and what it does to us, what it does to our hearts, what it does to our society of being, raised to think about each other as in competition with each other rather than oneness with each other. So I think a lot of these basic cultural things that we struggle with are being accentuated right now. Some of it I think is intentional. I think that's one of the ways that the oligarchs, whoever they have been in all the various cultures, tend to pit people against each other, to take conflicts that are there or tensions that are there and exacerbate them. So a lot of what I'm seeing, I think, is unnecessarily aggravated by, memes coming out of um, media and other positions of authority, power, and so forth. Um, but ultimately, I have a lot of faith in humanity. I believe that I also I can get pretty woo woo about things too, and I believe that uh, you know everything that everything that's happening here, our souls are co-creating. We collectively we're co-creating these things. I have no proof of it. It's just my working hypothesis. So I believe that we're creating these situations in order to activate the evolution of our consciousness. So while there's a lot of things I don't like, I also think it's grist for our mill, and every adversity holds within it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit is a strong belief of mine. So I'm on the one hand, some days I can be incredibly frustrated. And overall, however, I'm pretty relaxed about the long term uh, evolution of humanity. I'm confident in.
And you were sharing you want to kind of give us an overarching meta viewpoint of
Yeah,
yeah
yeah,
where you feel we're at.
yeah. Thank you. I don't want to get too geeky about this stuff because I can talk a long time about it, but whenever I have a chance to share with folks and going to go into talking about things like communication and so forth. I like to set it in a larger kind of evolutionary context because it's what I've spent most of my life thinking about. And uh, I think it is helpful. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, to think these big thoughts. Some people are more down to earth and just like to deal with chop wood, carry water. And that's fine, of course, too. But um, there's a term that I picked up from Matthew Fox years ago called functional cosmology, which basically means what's my story, any human being, what's my story about me personally and about our culture? Like, where did we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? And how are we going to get there? That this is a question that any healthy culture is very aware of. And it's kind of a sign of a bit of our dysfunction that if you ask somebody, what's the purpose of being human? I'm not exactly sure. I don't know, buy shit, get bigger houses. I'm not quite sure. Okay. And so I ever since that time, like 30 years ago or whatever, it was like, wow, this is, it sounds like a big fancy word and it kind of is functional cosmology, but it just means, do I have a story that makes sense of who I am and who my culture is and how I fit in the world? Right. So that's what these four questions are. Where have we been? Where are we now? Where are we going and how do we get there? So obviously, there are thousands of books written on this and so forth, but I just I have my own little short version that I like to talk about. So where have we been? We come from a culture that perceives itself as separate from the rest of nature. And that is, there's an Einstein quote that says, a human being is a part of the whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a prison for us that limits us to our personal desires and to affection for a few people nearest us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by by widening our circle of compassion and embracing all creation in its beauty. Okay, so that's just a beautiful little summary of, like, we come from this culture of separation, or as Riane Eisler calls it, I'm not Riane Eisler, Joanna Macy, if you know her work, a Buddhist writer who wrote a book called World as Lover, World as Self. And she says that when she looked at all the cultures that she had studied, they boiled down to one of two options. Either you see the world as a battlefield and a trap, or you see the world as your lover, or as an extension of yourself, right? So we obviously come from the battlefield trap culture, and I believe that we are headed toward this an understanding of ourselves, and it's part of a whole where we will understand that we are part of this whole. This is my larger self that I'm doing this life with. This is my lover. This world is my lover. And so that's where we come from. And Riane Eisler calls it the dominator detour. For like the last 5 to 10,000 years, we've been in this dominator detour. So that's where we come from. Where are we now? We're in between stories. Those stories are fading away. Like the Christian story that I grew up in. I am not anti-Christian in the least. I consider myself a follower of Jesus. But the stories that we created in Western culture about fall and redemption and sinfulness, and human beings are sinful creatures and all of that, has been incredibly destructive, I believe. And so we're leaving that story behind. We're bringing forward a new cosmology, a new understanding of ourselves that comes from science, that comes from Christian mystics, comes from other mystics. It's a story of oneness, basically. So we're in between these stories right now. Probably every one of us could tell our own story of how some days we're living in the story of battlefield and trap, and some days we're living in the experience of connection, belonging, and oneness. Right. And I know I go through that all day long, every day. I notice my whoa, back and forth. Right. So that's where we are right now. We're in between these two. I also like to make a mention of spiral dynamics, which is, I'm not going to talk much about it, but it's a great way to understand the world that we're living in, to understand the complexities, to understand the conflicts that we're in. It's basically a theory of cultural evolution. And it's color coded, which is I need to talk about that. And another factor, okay, I'm going to just repeat that one more time. Spiral dynamics, theory of cultural evolution. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, I'm a big fan of it. Okay. And another thing that I love to point out to us is, like, we're also in between not just cultural stories, but as humans moving from our hunter-gatherer, our classical civilizations and so forth, into this modern era, which is a huge challenge for us. And there's a concept called mismatched instincts that evolutionary psychologists that I have been following talk about. And it's one of the most important concepts to understanding what we struggle with. A mismatched instinct is basically an instinct that we still have in our nervous systems, in our bodies right now, that served us for thousands and millions of years to get us where we are. But now, because we live in such different cultural milieus, it's a struggle. And I'm not going to go into it a lot, but there's one example that really helps to, one really good example about this is this thing called the instinct that if I see food, it registers as good and I want to eat it. When you're living as we in most of our hominid and mammalian and primate histories, we lived with an irregular food supply. So of course, nature says, here's a bunch of food, eat as much as you can. But when you live now in a world of 24/7, for most of us are surrounded by food 24/7, this is a problem. Okay. So this has relates to sexuality things, to addiction things. And so the concept of mismatched instincts is really important to understand where we are now. Where are we going? What is the news story? The news story is the story of oneness. It's the story of you and I are the sum total of 13.8 billion years of unbroken evolution now thinking about itself. That is just enough to meditate on the rest of our lives. Just that alone is so mind-blowing and heart-opening and spirit-opening. It can also just be a kind of a scientific fact that like kind of goes over our head. But to me, it's the core of the spiritual path. Where are we going? We're moving away from the culture of separation and competition and all of that, and we're moving toward the culture of belonging, the culture of oneness. Everything we see is part of our larger self. Various people have called this given different names to this time that we're living in. The New Age, the Great Turning, the Great Awakening, the Return of the Goddess, et cetera, et cetera. But so many people now are talking about, whoa, there's something big happening on this planet, you know? And even Thich Nhat Hanh said the next Buddha is probably, could likely be a community practicing loving kindness, right? So there's this awakening. Brian's work, and I'm sure all of you are feeling this at some level in your own life. There's something big happening in my life on this planet. Another one that I love, is that Jesus is getting popular again. That, I had a very mixed relationship with Christianity, but I've always loved Jesus. And the fact that he got turned into a war god, was always so gross to me. Who would Jesus bomb? So I love that Jesus, or as Matthew Fox calls it, the coming of the cosmic Christ. The second coming of Christ, just like Thich Nhat Hanh's thing of the Buddha, it's not somebody descending from the sky. I don't claim to know for sure, but I doubt that's what it is. I think it's more likely it's the awakening of the heart, or as they say in the law of one, the move from third density to fourth density, the chakra moving from the solar plexus chakra to the heart chakra. So that's where we're going. How do we get there? There's so many great resources, but one of my favorite teachers, a man named Thomas Berry, was very clear. He said there's 4 sources of inspiration to guide us into this reinventing the human at the species level. That was his phrase. The historical mission of our time is to reinvent the human at the species level. And the 4 sources to do that, one is indigenous wisdom. The second is the experience of women. The third is classical religions. And the fourth is the new story that science is bringing us. Because it's some of the most mystical writings on the planet right now are coming from scientists. It's really incredibly beautiful. So that's how we get there. More specifically, what if I were to distill all that wisdom down to like, how do we get where we're called to go as human beings? It is through gratitude and celebration. My 3 primary teachers, Matthew Fox, Thomas Berry, and Marshall Rosenberg, each one of them understood that the purpose of humanity is to celebrate. And I don't mean superficial, pop a beer, watch TV. Thomas Berry used to put it this way. The human is that being in whom the universe reflects on and celebrates itself in a special mode of self-reflexive consciousness. It took 13.8 billion years to create an organism, an entity, an animal, a being, consciousness like us. who could look out and be, as Brian Swim likes to say, we are the species that gawks. I love that. Like my deepest understanding of why we are in the dysfunction that we are right now, especially in our culture, is because we don't know why we are here. And the reason that we are here is to protect and celebrate the earth and the universe. So, there are two main components of that reclaiming this celebration. One is to come back to our senses. Riane Eisler wrote this gorgeous book called Sacred Pleasure, and she and many others make a case for, we had this ascending religion of fall redemption Christianity for the last couple thousand years, and now there are the descending religions are bringing us back to our bodies, bringing us back to the senses, bringing us back to the soil, bringing us back to the earth, like to remember that this is also sacred. Our bodies are sacred, our senses are sacred, our sexuality is sacred, and to reclaim this sense of the sacredness of being in a human body, the sacredness of touch and our other senses. And the other thing is play, the role of play. They often evolutionary psychologists talk about the human being as adolescent chimps. We are a species of adolescent chimps. Chimps play a lot until they become adults, and then they kind of lose it, and they can just get into their ruts. But we can play our entire lifetime. We can play. Play not just meaning superficial, pop a beer, and have a video game or something, but play meaning creative, interacting, to be able to step outside our conditioning at any moment to find a new perspective, a new way to look at things, a new way to do things. That deeper sense of play. So that's my little wrap, not about those four questions that form the functional cosmology. Where do we come from? Where are we? Where are we going? How do we get there? So I'm going to end with the tool that I am most passionate about, which is nonviolent communication, also called compassionate communication. It is unfortunately mostly understood as just a model of communication, but it is actually a very deep spirituality that happens to be connected to an incredibly powerful tool, which is the model of communication. So between the consciousness and the tool itself, it has become my primary focus in my life, since I have to focus on, I can't be dealing, we're trying to work with all of this stuff at once. I have to focus. So I've chosen to focus on NVC because I saw it transform my life, my community's life about 15 years ago, Earth Haven, and so many individuals and couples and groups that I have worked with over the years. So that's that. Happy to just leave it there. Brian, you can ask me more questions, or we can open it up to other people.
Do you want to share a little bit about, first of all, thanks for all that. That was I was taking notes, which I don't think I've done that before in the beginning of the circle. Do you want to share a little bit about how NVC works, just some very basic components?
Yes. So whenever I share about NVC, I'm very clear to make the distinction between what I just said a minute ago. The consciousness or the spirituality or the intention of NVC, is how we say it for short, nonviolent communication, of NVC, and then the model of communication. Marshall Rosenberg is the man who developed NVC over the course of about 50 years. And so the consciousness that is built on is basically the golden rule. Love thy neighbor as thyself, which of course is at the heart of all, world religions. The way that we say it in NVC is, because we don't use religious language, we use secular language. is the purpose of NVC is to care about my needs and your needs equally moment by moment so that we can maximize giving and receiving joyfully to each other and make the most wonderful life that we can. So the spirituality is this very universal spirituality of love thy neighbor as thyself. Another very deep aspect of it is that the belief that the most precious thing that one human being can give another is that which is in our heart. Okay? So in NVC, that would translate as the most valuable thing that I can give you or that you can give me is to talk about what you're feeling, what you're needing, and what you would like to have happen between the two of us. Right? So the tool now, the communication model is not an end in itself. The goal of NVC is not to speak NVC. The goal of NVC is to change how we think so that we can interact differently. So how is it that, what is this model trying to help us to, how is it trying to help us to think? It breaks it down into basically two things that happen between human beings, which we call honesty and empathy. Honesty simply means me sharing with you what's going on inside of me. Empathy means me be curious and empathetic about what's going on for you. So it's this flow, right? This energetic flow that's always happening between human beings. So NVC is a model of communication that tries to optimize this flow of whatever you want to call it, the great spirit, the universe, the chi, prana, God, whatever you call this energy. We're trying to optimize the flow of this divine intelligence between the two of us by being very aware of sharing what's inside of me, receiving you, sharing me, receiving you, this dance, okay? To break it down more specifically, we have these four components that we focus on: observation, feeling, need, and request. Marshall discovered over many years of experimenting that he found that this was the best way that he found for one person to share what's going on for them with another person. Observation, just simply what it sounds, whatever just happened, whatever it is I want to talk to you about. So say you and I are partners, and you come home from work and you say to me, God, Steve, you're such a slob, clean this place up. And I want to talk about it now with you. Okay. So the observation is simply, hey, when you said that thing to me, that's the observation. When you said that thing to me, or maybe you don't remember, maybe it's the next day, and I say, when you said that I was a slob, that's the observation. Feeling, I felt, or if it's in present tense, I feel. And it would use an actual feeling word, not I feel like you're an idiot. I feel like you're controlling me. We use actual feeling words, like I feel sad, I feel hurt, I feel disappointed, I feel discouraged. And then I connect it to my needs because I was really wanting connection, or I was really wanting to be understood, or I was really wanting some shared reality, or I was really wanting some support. Whatever the need was that was going on for me, because needs and feelings are directly connected. Nature puts in us feelings in order to give us information moment by moment, whether a need has been met or not. Right? Nature wants us to thrive, and so it gives us these bodily sensations to direct us toward thriving. I put my hand on something that's hot, too hot for my skin. Ouch. Nature says, take your hand off. Right? I go to talk to you and you say, Steve, you're a jerk. Ouch. Nature's telling me that's not working. That doesn't meet my needs. So observation, feeling, need, and then request. What would I like to request of you, or ask you, what would you like to request of me? So observation, feeling, need, and request, connected to whether I'm sharing honestly with you or I am asking, being empathetic and curious about what's going on for you. So let's go back to the role play. You said, Steve, you're a slob. Clean this place up. Hey, hearing you say that, I feel really frustrated because I'm like really wanting to talk about what's going on right now. Would you be willing to sit with me for a few minutes and talk this out? That would be starting with honesty. What's going on for me? I could decide to start with empathy and I'd use the same four components. Steve, you're a slob. Clean this place up. Hey, sounds like you're feeling really irritated right now. Like you're really wanting more order and beauty. Is that what's going on? Observation, feeling, need, and request. Whether it's honesty or whether it's empathy, those are the four components. The other component that's very important is what we call self-empathy, which means connecting to my own feelings and needs, which is necessary often before I can tell you what's going on for me. So it's very simple. NVC, that's the gist of NVC right there, the model of it. But the application of it is enormous. Like the tools, how this tool can be worked and shaped to address so many different situations is just been stunningly beautiful to me. So that's a quick overview of
Yeah,
it.
and for me as well. So many people that I know as well. Yeah. I just want to touch on one thing and then I think we can open it up. And I'd love if anybody has any kind of something that's actually a real life situation that's actually happening for them or something that's really going on that they would like support in, um, that they could share. We could work through it together. I've seen Steve do that in amazing ways over the years, and I think one thing that's really valuable to keep in mind is whatever you're experiencing, we probably all can. I think we all can relate to. That's part of NBC, right? Is that the needs are universal and the feelings are universal.
Absolutely.
So we can relate to it in our own way, in our own sort of situations and circumstances. I want to ask you about conflict in general. Uh, I feel like when I was, kind of earlier on my spiritual path, there was this idea of that when you become more spiritually awake or more enlightened, there'll be no conflict. You'll communicate with people in this way that just won't have any, there just won't be any conflict somehow. And, you know, evolving and maturing, I actually think, and actually working with clients, I actually find that if that's actually happening, that's a really bad sign, actually. That's a sign the relationship may be over, that people are just living independent lives. Um, but there obviously is a healthy form of conflict and there's an unhealthy form of conflict. So I guess there's a two-part question. Like the first part is conflict okay in a relationship? Is it okay to have some conflict? Is that bad to have conflict? And and then if there is conflict, what's a healthy way to have conflict as opposed to unhealthy?
Yeah, great question. Like a lot of topics, first you got to define terms.
Mhm.
So the common understanding of I think that people have of conflict is like when things get heated and you start verbally kind of sparring with each other. Well, you said that and you shouldn't have done that. Well, you did that. Like, okay. So conflict, as in my understanding of conflict, is simply what happens when two human beings are trying to get their needs met by working it out with each other. It's like, okay, I'm wanting to go on vacation to wherever, to Maine, and you want to stay home and just have a staycation and right. So conflict, uh, I like to juxtapose it to violence. So NVC is about nonviolence. So to know what nonviolence is, we have to define violence. So violence, as Marshall, and obviously there's many ways to define violence, but the simplest way that I ever heard Marshall define it was simply trying to make somebody do something or force somebody to do something. I love that. Like I'm trying to make somebody do something, then that's a type of violence. Now, it doesn't mean I don't desire someone to change or do something different. It's just that I'm not going to try to make them do it. I want to. I might make my case for it. My give point A, B, and C about why I think it's a good idea. I would love for them to come to my point of view, but I'm not going to try to make them do it. Right? And so Marshall then would, there's another word we need to define here then, power and influence. Okay. So power, there's power over, clean this place up or I'm going to kick your ass. Right. That's obviously power over. But then there's power with, right, which is expressing something that's important to me in the hopes that you will respond to my longing. Hey, I'm really tired from work and I would love for this place to get cleaned up so that we can just have a restful evening tonight. That's power with sharing what it is I would like to have happen and so forth. Okay. So those are defining those terms there. Now let's go back to this question about conflict. Yes, conflict is absolutely an important part of any relationship. But when we talk about being conflict averse, most of us have never actually experienced conflict that was nonviolent, especially growing up. Maybe as adults, maybe we got lucky and we learned somehow how to do that, or we were around other people who learned how to do that. But certainly most of us grew up in households where it was all about trying to make somebody do something, even if you're speaking softly. Now, Stevie, you know that good boys clean their plate off. Stevie, it's against the teachings of the church for you to talk like that. Like, even if it's, soft, speaking softly, it's trying to make somebody do something through shame or through outright physical pain, physical force. So learning how to have conflict that does not tip over into violence. That is the one of the core practices of NVC. And Marshall's claim, having developed NVC and traveled all around the world for like 50 years, was that when two people can drop down into their hearts, talk about what they're feeling, what they're needing, not try to making each other do what they want them to do, but just being vulnerable, like the power of vulnerability, that he says the solution will find you. He called it the magic show. The solution will find you. And this is so rare that any of us have ever seen anything like this. That's kind of hard to believe. But after, experimenting with NVC for about 15 years now, I certainly don't have nearly the experience that Marshall did, but I have enough of my own experience. I'm like, wow, this is really powerful. Like what happens when we drop down to our heart, try not to force each other to do things. We're just sharing, really caring about my needs and your needs equally. The shift in energy that happens in that dynamic is really quite remarkable.
Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to bring in? Yeah, Robin, go ahead.
Yeah, I had situation. I invited a friend out to breakfast, a couple of friends, and this one friend I have is she's just a real intense gal. Um, and I've had a couple of times when I've been with her, especially if I'm sitting right across from her, and she'll get on a topic she's very passionate about, and it's and we're talking like a very a negative thing, and it's like the whites of her eyes will show, and her voice is loud, and uh she's really intense. Like the energy was just coming at me and coming at me. And I've spent most of my life just being quiet and enduring a lot of discomfort with people. And now I'm just learning to speak up. But and I know I didn't say it right, but what I finally said was, I said, "Oh gosh, friend." I really wish I had like a little intensity knob on you and I could just turn you down a little bit because the intensity that you're coming at me is like hard for me to take. And sure enough, she got real offended about it and then later told me she didn't want to be in my women's group anymore. And I said, that's not how I was hoping this would work out, and so I was just, I'd love to have you know, maybe an example of something you could say.
Yeah, cool. Let's role play this. So you be her and I'll be you.
Oh, great. Oh, oh, geez. Let's see. Um, you just got to listen to what's happening.
Yeah.
Have you like listened to this show? It's going to be like the end of the world. And if you don't do this one thing, you're going to be really upset. It's going to ruin everything. It's going to like ruin your genes and ruin your thing.
Hey Robin,
Your
hey
kids.
Robin. It sounds like you're feeling really frustrated right now. Is that what's going on?
Yeah.
And maybe scared?
Yeah. Scared. And you should be scared too.
What are you thinking that like you're concerned about like the well-being of the country? I'm just gonna make something up here.
Hell yeah.
Are you concerned
And
about the well-being of the country?
don't you understand what I'm saying?
Sounds like it sounds like this is a really big issue for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you'd probably really like to see some changes happening, huh?
Yeah.
Are you in a place to hear what's going on for me?
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay.
No. Oh, no. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. What's going on for you?
Well, this topic is important to me, uh, and I'm fine to continue with this for a little while. And then I have some other stuff that I'd love to share with you. Are you up for shifting over to that in a few minutes?
Okay.
Yeah. So you wanna tell me a little bit more about this situation?
I don't know. I'm thinking of my friend
So
now.
that's it. So we can leave it there.
Yeah. I can just see your eyes
Okay.
rolling.
So I mentioned in my intro, I mentioned this concept of mismatched instincts.
Mhm.
One of the most important mismatched instincts uh, to be aware of is that, how do I put this? When we became primates, right? So we were first furry little mammals. I'm gonna share a. Oh, Brian, can you give me power to share my screen?
Uh,
You can just make me host if that'll do it.
see if that works. I clicked on something that said multiple
Share.
participants can
Yes,
share
thank you.
simultaneously.
Mhm. Hold on a second. Okay. In all my decades of being fascinated with psychology, this is one of the coolest things I ever learned. These friends of mine, Michael Dowd and Connie Barlow, made this diagram, and they're the ones that I studied with to learn about mismatched instincts and a lot about evolutionary psychology. Okay, so our brain, your brain, my brain, has these four parts to it. The part that started when we were reptiles, brainstem, and then all the way up through furry little mammals, primates. Okay. So when we were in this primate stage here, well, when we were in this furry little mammal stage, we basically had no defense to a predator like a wolf, right? But then we fast forward a few million years, and now we're primates, and we're traveling in bands of, 15, 20 of us, and we can pick up stones and we can pick up sticks and all that. And now we can defend ourselves from the wolf. Well, a commensurate thing developed internally for each of us. that nature put inside of us, which is this intense feelings, intensely positive feelings when we get the message that we belong. Like we walk into a party and our friends say, "Oh, yay, Steve is here." And how good that feels, right? And conversely, if we walk into a room and we hear someone in the corner saying, "Oh my God, Steve's here," shit, and how bad we feel, right? We all know those feelings. Why would nature give us those feelings? Because nature wants us to stay together. Gives us really, really horrible feelings when we get separated, and really, really positive feelings when we're together. Okay. So anytime you or I or any human being hears something that they make it mean they don't matter, there's something wrong with them, they did it wrong, that kind of stuff, it goes in as life threatening, as a gun to the head. So if we say to somebody something like, you really did that wrong, Robin, or Robin, you're just talking too much, or I sure wish I could turn the volume down on you, Robin, unless someone is really conscious and really self-aware about noticing the sensations in their body and the meaning that they're making that's causing that, they're going to react either overtly, like some kind of FU energy, or quietly and politely, which was more my style. And I would just say to myself, "Oh, I'm never going to talk to that person again." We're going to do some version of fight or flight, right? So in NVC, we have this, Marshall had this really important warning. He said it a couple different ways. The one way that is most kind of clever and zingy is, if you want to suffer, think about what's wrong with people. If you want to really suffer, say it out loud. Because our judgments about other people are just that. They're judgments. They're not reality. There are judgments. Like if I say you're beautiful or if I say you're ugly, it's just my judgment. You are neither beautiful nor ugly. You are just you. And people put different meaning onto you. Okay. So the other warning that he would say is that any judgment is a tragic expression of an unmet need. So in that moment, Robin, you were having a really important need that was not being met, a need for connection, most likely, a need for inclusion and connection and reciprocity or mutuality, back and forthness, right? That was the need that was really important to you. Mm-hmm. But you, like all of us, have not been taught how to talk about our feelings and our needs. Instead of, and this is where Marshall said, every judgment is a tragic expression of an unmet need. So instead of being able to say what I said in my NVC jargon, you said it in what, and I think in your mind, you were politely trying to tell her something. If you were just going to be full blown, you'd have just said, "You're talking too much, be quiet." But you tried to be polite about it. You tried to say, "Oh, if I had a dial, I would turn it down." But she took it as criticism, and that's a gun to the head. So for most of us humans. And so she responded from that place of deep hurt and pain. And she blamed you for her pain, which is a whole nother thing we do in NVC, which is we never blame anyone for our feelings. We acknowledge that my feelings are created inside of me by my filters. No force, the quote that Marshall would use is, "No force outside of me is the cause of my feelings." Well, she doesn't know that. She, like all of us, were taught to think that what people say and do are the causes of our feelings, and we're just helpless victims to what happens outside of us. And so she had that deep primate response. And you're the one who said it, so she blames you. So now she's going to want to distance herself from you. So I'm curious what goes on for you, Robin, hearing all of that.
Yeah, no, yeah, I like it. Yeah, and I I don't know if she might. I'm worried if I said it just like you said, she might feel patronized, knowing her. Uh, I don't know. I guess our whole group was geared around the 12, I mean the four agreements. So what we focus on a lot is stick to your word, don't take things personally, don't assume, and don't and do a good job, do your best job. So so I've been making the assumption that she won't take things personally, you know. Uh, but yeah, I guess there's a trickier way to do it. And maybe if I had done it sooner, maybe if I had interjected a little sooner, it would have, yeah, because my partner and I, we're used to doing it with each other. We both are passionate and we might be talking about something and getting louder and louder, and we'll just go, like this. And the other one gets it. It's like, oh, okay. And they just lower our voice and we talked a little slower. But I guess yeah, she wasn't in the habit of.
Yeah, the practice that you're talking about in NVC, we call it interrupting a conversation to bring it back to life.
Mhm, mhm,
Okay. And the goal is to do that as soon as possible, as soon as you recognize it, to
mhm.
not build up resentment. Right?
Right.
And
And I,
unfortunately, in polite society, we're literally taught to be quiet and build up resentment. I mean, we're not told to build up
yeah.
resentment. That's what it does. We're taught to be polite, and then you're going to build up resentment, and that's just not that doesn't serve relationships.
Hmm.
And if it's a stranger, that's one thing to interrupt a conversation to bring it back to life. But with partners and people that we're in ongoing relationships with, this is a great thing to make an agreement about. Like if you and I were getting to be friends, I would say to you, "Hey, Robin, if you're talking and it's going longer than I'm enjoying, how would you like me to share that with you? How would you like to hear that from me?" And we would
Hmm.
we would work that agreement out ahead of time.
Hmm.
And again, the interrupting to bring it back to life does not mean interrupting it to bring it back to me.
Yeah.
It means to bring it back to life, which is life in NVC means talking about my feelings and or hearing in this case, hearing
Hmm.
what you're feeling and what your needs are. Because if
Hmm.
you're just going on and on complaining about something, in NVC, we don't consider that a life-serving conversation. I mean, unless
Yeah.
unless I'm liking for whatever reason I'm liking to hear it. But
Hmm.
but whenever we're starting to disconnect from another person, then we're actually serving the relationship in order to bring it up. Now, how you bring it up, that makes all the difference in the world. But in NVC, to bring it up in a way that back to life means I'm wanting to connect to what you're feeling and needing. That's why when I interrupted you, the first thing I said was, "Are you feeling?"
Hmm.
That's how I bring a conversation back to life. Sounds like you're feeling really frustrated about that, and you're concerned about the well-being or whatever, something like that.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
wanted to share a couple reflections on that. So that was one of the biggest surprises for me, I would say, with NVC was the idea that you are taught to interrupt someone, actually. And you're taught to interrupt someone, as he says, to bring the conversation back to life. So as opposed to building up resentment. So it feels to me like the core principle is the when you're communicating with somebody, why you communicate with them. Well, there's a lot of different reasons, but the primary reason is to be connected to them. Otherwise, why would you even be talking to them, right? So the
Right?
whole point is to be to be connected. And so if someone's saying something to me, and sometimes maybe I don't understand it or I can't follow it or it's too much for me at once, you are taught to just let someone know, hey, I'm really interested in being connected to you. I'm really interested in, knowing what's alive for you. And, I'm not following what you're saying, or I'm not finding it interesting, or there's a way to communicate that. And if both people want to feel connected, then they want to know is what I'm saying being received. Like if I'm talking right now and you guys aren't interested, then I don't want to be talking anymore. you know? So I want to know if you're interested or not interested. And so that's, in fact, sometimes it's good to stop and say, is this making sense to you? Is this interesting for you? How, you know, Steve said, how do you feel about what I'm saying? Um, I just wanted to make one other related point, which goes back to the first point, which is I think we're just so conditioned, especially those of us who are spiritual people, we're so conditioned that conflict is bad. And so I think what I hear in the conversation is like, how could I say it that she wouldn't be upset with me? And what I've come to
Yeah.
realize is like, it's actually not, that's actually not the goal. The goal is to be connected. And part of being connected could be her being feeling upset inside, or her feeling angry, or her feeling, or you feeling angry, you feeling upset. I mean, I've had situations. I mean, my son Gio's here with us. I've had situations where we're angry with each other, and we're, you know, and it's like, wow, this is an amazing conversation. You know, it's just, it's real, it's alive, it's dynamic, it's, you know, it feels genuine. Um, so I think that's something that I've really been seeing, and I think then you take that out into kind of the larger situation, kind of the cultural situation, the American situation, and you know, kind of my message I'm saying to people is like, yes, there's conflict right now, but it's not bad. It's actually, from a certain perspective, it can be fun, it can be good, it can be. Now, I do acknowledge that a lot of this is not done in conscious NVC communication, but with that said, the conflict itself is not a bad thing. I think when two people are at a space of conflict, I think it means they both care, right? So that's a good starting point. Is both people care. Um, I've seen this with like I watch Steve's a football fan, and I'm a sports fan, and I'll watch a team, and you could have two players like arguing with other. It's like, wow, they both really care about this game. You know, they both really want to bring their best to the game. And so anyway, I just wanted to bring that out, that that's not necessarily a bad thing when there's potential conflict. And I think having the confidence and the love that you can move through it together and evolve into a higher place together is an important component of that, foundational component of that.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a that thing saying that I said earlier about every judgment is a tragic expression of an unmet need. There's a corollary that Marsh used to say to that, which is the uglier the judgment, the more precious the need. And if you stop and think about your life, like when you ask, you know, when you think about when have I said some of the things that I most regret? When was I most intense about stuff that I said or did? It's because something was really, really important, right? That's why we get worked up about things. Something's really important. So if we can remember that when somebody says something to us really intense, oh, instead of like judging them, like, oh, they're really being a jerk or whatever, it's like, wow, something's really important to them. You can
Yeah.
remember that. It really changes the dynamic between the people.
Mhm.
It's really important. Now, if I'm the one speaking and I want and I'm conscious and I that I want to be understood and I want connection, Marshall recommended that people use 40 word chunks, like 40 words at a time, like when you're talking about something deep and emotional and so forth.
Mhm.
That he noticed that pretty much humans all around the planet, if you go past 40 words, then the other person is not likely to be able to really understand you, and especially when there's strong emotions. So to serve your own interests of connection, chunking it down to 40 words or so, and then saying something like, what goes on for you hearing me say that?
Mhm.
I'm not sure how clear I was about that. Would you tell me what you heard me say so I can see how I said that? Something like that.
Mhm.
We
I
call
remember
that
you saying to chunk it down even more generally for men.
yes, yes, right. That's a fascinating evolutionary thing. Like they've done studies on women and men, and women use about twice as, I don't know if it was twice as much. It was more like 60%. But anyhow, in general, a lot more words in a day than a man does. And I remember Robert Bly talking once about how you look at it from an evolutionary perspective, our 100,000 years of hunter gatherer history, Men are going out hunting. Be quiet. We don't want to scare the prey. Whisper a few words. Okay. Women are back with the babies and the children, teaching them how to talk, and they're talking about how they're going to cook the meal and explaining to each other, go down the road and at the big oak tree, turn right, and then you'll see this and get the plant that has the stems that look like there's all this verbal stuff. So 100,000 years of women being really verbal and staying together to be safe, and men going off into the woods shaped our brains differently. My partner Terry and I joke about this all the time. You know, if I'm getting to the place where I'm wanting to talk less or stop talking, we have this fun way that we've learned to say it, which is I'll say to her, babe, I think I'm running out of words.
Yeah, what is that?
That's okay. Just keep listening.
Yeah, but that's true. Like if that's all she wants, okay, great. As long as you know that I'm not likely to respond, I'm happy to listen. Not all the time, but sometimes I'm happy to just keep listening.
Mm-hmm.
What are you gonna say, Brian?
I was gonna is it called a lifeline?
Lifelines.
Yeah, but there's like certain signs that you can do that are like Robin, I thought did a good one when she said her partner do the timeout thing, or you
Yeah,
just mentioned a phrase that you use. Um, there's a phrase like you can use if you want to just take a break from the conversation.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
those,
So what Brian's talking about is a thing in NVC we call lifelines, which are little tools, little tricks, little exercises that we do to keep connection going. So like the analogy is like a lifeline on a boat, where if you fall over, or the railing is can be like a lifeline. So in things to keep you into connection. So yeah, little phrases, sayings, tricks, so
I
forth.
know a big one is starting with I statements. Like I could have said, "Hey, friend, I'm having some trouble hearing what you're saying because of the intensity is making me nervous. If you could calm down a little bit, I think I'd be able to hear what you're saying."
Yeah. Let me take that a little bit further, Robin, which is that, so I back up to say in NVC, we're never trying to make anyone do anything,
Right.
but we have strong preferences sometimes,
Mhm.
right? And so how do I invite? So we talk about in NVC, we talk about inviting somebody to a new behavior. You really wanted your friend to do some different things
Yeah.
in order to have connection. Okay. So how do we invite people to a new behavior? Well, I mentioned the phrase power with as opposed to power over. So
Mm-hmm.
a power with tool, if I would like to invite you to a new behavior, I empathize with the feelings and the needs that are going on beneath causing the behavior that I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to my situation, the little role play where you come home and you say, Steve, you're a slob, clean this place up. Okay. So if I am capable, and sometimes we're not able to access this kind of compassionate consciousness because we're just too worked up, but if we can, so that my goal, I would like to empathize with you about the feelings and the needs that you're having that led you to say, Steve, you're a slob, clean this place up.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that might be something like, sounds like you're really frustrated, like you're really wanting some like more beauty around here, or you're really wanting some support. Yes, and you this and always that. Yeah, and there's lots of times when you come home when it's messy like this. Yes, da 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 da. Right? That's what we call empathy, connecting to the other person's feelings and needs.
Mm-hmm.
Once they've had the empathy that they need, then they're pretty likely to want to know what's going on for us. And that's when I would say, I'd love to tell you what's going on for me. Are you open to hearing that now? Once I think that they've had enough empathy.
Yeah.
So that's how we invite people to a new behavior, is we show the respect for them about their feelings and their needs. That does not mean I'm agreeing with it. I'm not saying, okay, it's fine that you called me a slob. No, that's not what I'm saying. In fact, when I get to it, when I get around to telling you what's going on for me, I'm going to talk about how I don't like that. But I want to invite you to a new behavior. So I show respect for the feelings and the needs that are behind the thing that you're doing that I don't like.
Mm.
It's not justifying, it's not condoning. There's a night and day difference, apples and oranges difference between agreeing and empathizing.
Mm.
Hey, sweetie, sounds like you're really frustrated. You really want more order in the house, huh? That's empathy. It doesn't mean it's okay that you just called me, whatever you just called me, slob. Those are two different things, agreement and empathy.
Could you say, "Oh, could you just start out saying, I'm sorry, honey, I didn't get to it like I was planning to."
Well, it
Or,
depends what you mean by the word sorry,
uh-huh.
because
I'm
we
sorry you're upset
because
about it.
because in the NVC world, the typical concept of apology is not something that we're into.
Mhm.
If now the words I'm sorry can mean different things, right? It's like saying I love you. I love you can mean 1,000 different things. I'm sorry can also mean a bunch of different things. It can mean get off my case. I'm going to say these words so that you stop talking to me now. That's what it could mean.
Yeah.
It could mean anything.
Mm.
If
Yeah.
what it means is, oh gosh, that was really bad of me to be such a slob. Yeah, I acknowledge I'm a slob, and that's not good. We don't believe that kind of self-judgment, self-hatred, self-loathing is that we do not believe that it helps anything. It actually makes things worse.
Hmm.
If by saying I'm sorry, I mean I regret that you're coming home to such a mess. I really wished I'd cleaned it up earlier. If that's what you mean by I'm sorry, then yes, that fits the NVC model. But
Hmm.
most apologizing comes out of this dominator model of one person putting themselves lower than the other and admitting that they're bad and wrong, and now the other person is supposed to forgive them. That is a whole hierarchical power over thing that we do not buy into in NVC.
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Interesting.
So yes, the answer to your question is I guess that could be a skillful thing to say, but um, only if it meant I'm sorry, meaning I have a regret or I'm sad. Like,
Mm. Or I'm sorry I disappointed you, I guess you
well,
could
we
say.
don't we wouldn't say that either because you're not the
Okay.
cause of the other person's feelings.
Okay. Yeah.
What if two people are wanting empathy at the same time?
Yeah, those are empathy wars. Uh, Usually the first thing to do is to call a timeout, and hopefully you have some kind of a lifeline in the back of your pocket that you can stay connected beyond just empathy. So like the couples that I counsel, I suggested them that that they have a shared list of 10 things that they can draw from when they get into this kind of a place where their communication is not being constructive. Like, I want empathy from you, you want empathy from me. That's a dead end. Okay, what can we do instead? To have a list of things that maybe in that moment you're both so, you know, pissed off and stuck, you can't, nothing's going to work, in which case you just call a timeout and you walk away. But ideally, you find a way, one of these things on your list. What might those things be? It might be breathing together. It might be just silently uh, sitting on the couch, cuddling. It might be going for a silent walk together. It might be changing the topic to something that you really like to talk about. Not that you're pretending that everything's okay. You acknowledge that there's stuckness here. It's what the Jungians call holding the tension of the opposites. We acknowledge that we're in this stuck, yucky place. We're not pretending it's there. Can we keep it here in this hand and do something different for a little while to nourish ourselves so that we can then come back to this?
And
Yeah.
also, I guess if you're in a conscious place, you could choose to take turns dealing with one person's needs first and then turn to the other person's needs
If you,
second.
yeah, absolutely. If one of you is willing to go into empathy first, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions, comments, reflections?
What
I
about when one person in the disagreement hauls off and slugs the other person across the face? Yeah, but I'm being serious.
Yeah, I bet you are. That sounds, yeah. Um,
I see your
well,
feelings are really, really strong, and let's talk about it.
there's a thing in NVC we call the protective use of force. So violence is trying to make somebody do something, but the exception to that in the NVC world is what we call protective use of force. So if you're somebody that is, smaller than me that I can physically overpower, I may do that. You're my 8-year-old son, right? And you get all upset and you start, hitting me with whatever, your truck or something. Like I may take the truck away from you. I may restrain you. But that is what we call protective use of force. That is not, we don't consider that an act of violence. The criteria for whether it's an act of violence is primarily about my intention. Am I doing this to punish you? Am I doing this to teach you a lesson? Well, then does not fall in the NVC consciousness. Am I doing this to protect myself from further violence? Am I doing this to protect you from hurting yourself or hurting someone else? So if it's adults and someone punches me and I then feel scared, like a lot of women do, they get a restraining order. So a restraining order would be a protective use of force. So in that moment, what would I do? I would do whatever I need to do to protect myself from further violence.
Yeah, I think that's how I felt with my friend. I was definitely trying to protect myself from the intensity of the
Yeah,
negativity, and I was just like my skin was crawling, my hair was standing
yeah,
on. Yeah.
yeah. And
just want to follow up with what Steve said, just to make it clear, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember you talking about how in NVC there is the support of self-defense, right? So if someone's punching you, you don't have to just sit there and get punched. It's viable to defend yourself from further violence.
protective use of force and
Yeah.
self-defense. Yes.
Yep. Wilson, did you want to say something?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
This has all been so great, you guys. I really appreciated your example, and it had me thinking about kind of like the philosophy you were laying out, Steve, in terms of moving to a cosmology of oneness, and that kind of idea about radical responsibility that like what I'm perceiving in the other is actually arising within me, and thus is somewhat in the reality of my own responsibility, and playing with that way of thinking um got me to think of like, we have our fight or flight reactions, but then I also felt like there was a third that emerged in me called just burning, where you just witness the reaction or judgment in yourself and just totally allow it to be there, without needing to change it on some level. And I found that to be pretty helpful in terms of mitigating, triggers that come to me, because triggers are painful, like lashing out or needing to change something is painful. But if I can take responsibility that, for like instance, in your case, Robin, like if I was sitting there and I, have felt friends be really intense, almost like inquiring, like, um, is there a way I can release this energy from within myself that I not need to experience it? And I'm working with the tool of forgiveness that like if I recognize an energy externally, that it's something that I haven't fully owned or forgiven in myself. Like, for instance, when have I been way too intense, to my friends
Hmm.
and dominated them and created situations like that, which may be even beyond, I feel like my memory as an individual, may be connected to something even deeper in that. But that to me is like an interesting option that I'm curious about your thoughts on that, Steve, in terms of that kind of radical responsibility. And because to me, I feel like that really is a very powerful way to just like kind of Jesus's example, you like set an example that he was in a space of consciousness that he was not upset about other people's anger and projections, And I find that to be really inspirational in this process and kind of having that inner strength, which I feel like you have, Steve, to just kind of, take someone's projection, feel the pain of it, feel the pain of separation, feel the incredible agony that is inherent within some of the perceptions and experiences of being human. But um, somehow just feel it and let it be there
Yeah.
and then come to find. But anyhow, I just find this stuff to be the cutting edge of humanity and my own personal experience. Because all of life is communication and relationship. That's reality. So anyhow, thoughts on that?
Oh yeah. I want to go back to this this notebook here. Um, just go backwards a couple of pages. So bear with me this and while I relate how this is connected to what you were just saying, Wilson. So this diagram was developed by a man named Bill Harris from Centerpoint Research, and it is one of this might be the single most important psychological thing that I've ever learned. I mean, if I can say that, certainly one of, right? So this question of where do feelings come from,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what we're
Mm-hmm.
taught, we grow up and we see and we hear people around us say like, oh, so and so said that I was selfish and that made me mad. Mommy, mommy said daddy was being mean and daddy got angry. Daddy got angry and made mommy sad. It's all this people
Mm-hmm.
making each other feel stuff, right? Well, this um this is such a huge transformation of consciousness that I like to like give an analogy. Like imagine that we were sitting in medieval Italy, and in walks Galileo with his telescope, and he now says, "Well, we now know that the Earth is going around the sun. The sun is not going around the Earth." We would think he's crazy. Like our senses will never tell us that. Even to this day, we talk about sunrise and sunset
Right.
because that's what our senses tell us. So our senses, common sense tells us that the sun rises and the sun sets.
Right.
Common sense tells us that mommy said something and made daddy mad.
Right.
Daddy did something and made mommy cry. That's what common sense tells us. But in the last 100 years, we've developed not only ways, well, we developed technology for being able to measure sound waves and light waves. And so we now know that input from the environment is in the form of sound waves into our ears, light waves into our eyes, molecules into our mouth, and those, etc. So what is it that our senses are taking in? Right? The input from the environment is sound waves and light waves. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So these sound waves, light waves, pass through a filtering mechanism. As it says here, largely unconscious, running on automatic for most people. But it passes through these filters. And then here's the huge takeaway from this diagram that's mind-blowing. We then create an internal representation of reality. Or the folksy term for this is the mind's eye. We create a picture in our own mind. Like if I say the word mother, boing, most of you come up with images of your mother in your mind, right?
Mhm.
Or I say your favorite love song, right? And that probably starts playing in your head, okay? So I'm input from the environment, and you are creating internal representation of reality, or as the semanticists talk about, the map of reality. There's the reality, and then we create maps of reality in our head, okay? So this internal representation of reality, which is a sound or a picture, sometimes it can be a smell, like this, that internal representation of reality, follow the arrows up, that's what creates your emotional state. Our feelings are not caused by what happens outside of us. They are caused by the internal representation of reality that we create inside of us. And that is determined by our filters. And why is this so freaking important? Because it is one of the most liberating things that any human being can ever, 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 ever learn. That my feelings are created by my internal representations of reality. So if I'm having feelings that and reactions that I don't like, I get to work on it inside of me rather than just trying to make Wilson change or make Robin change. I'm going to make Brian change. If I can just get everybody to change, then I can be happy. Well, in NVC, we're all about inviting people to new behaviors. We are all about it. Wilson, would you come over and help me rake leaves tomorrow? Robin, would you be willing to make lunch for me tomorrow? Brian, would you like to go out to dinner? We're all about trying to create things with people that we like. But we also recognize that I can work at creating the beauty and harmony and all the good things that I want from inside of me as well. It's part of what I love about this system. It's both tools for working on the outside with people, tools for working on the inside. So what's the single most important tool, in my opinion, about working on the inside? It actually, I didn't know if I was going to bring these out or not. These are these puppets that Marshall developed. He traveled all around the world with these puppets. The giraffe represents compassionate consciousness. Jackal represents power over consciousness. And each of them have these ears. So these are giraffe ears. So this is a filtering mechanism, just like on that diagram. Sound waves and light waves come into my eyes and ears. I filter them. With these ears, with these jackal ears, you say, Steve, you're a slob. Clean this place up. Those are sound waves and light waves. They don't mean anything until they come into me and I give them meaning. And the meaning that I give it is, you have no right to talk to me like that. You're being rude. You don't give a shit about me. All that suffering, all that suffering. Okay. But we don't have to filter it that way. We can filter it through these ears, which means all I hear is that you are having feelings and needs. Every judgment is a tragic expression of an unmet need. There's another corollary to that, which says the only thing human beings are ever saying is, please, I have a need, and thank you for meeting my need. Please, every judgment is a tragic expression of an unmet need. The only thing human beings are ever saying is please and thank you. So my partner says, Steve, you're a slob. Clean this place up. If I have these ears on, I'm hearing feelings and needs. That's all I'm hearing. I'm hearing her say, I'm really frustrated and tired. I'm really wanting some support and some nurturing environment to rest. Now, in the early stages of hearing this stuff, I know it sounds really difficult and unbelievable. And like, how could anyone ever do that? She just yelled at me. How could I possibly? But believe me, it works over time. It's like any spiritual practice. You more you practice, the more you benefit from it, and the more your life is enriched. So your practice, Wilson, that you mentioned, you're practicing staying with your feelings, right? That is what I call that a Jedi skill. Learning to sit with the uncomfortable feelings so that the energy runs through my body. Yes, it's just energy. It comes and it goes. And if I can just breathe and let the energy move through me, then it goes. I had a teacher once who said, feelings, how do you say it? Feelings take usually 5 seconds to 3 minutes for any feeling to run through your body. Even really intense ones, like, someone comes up to you and shakes their fist in your face, says you're an asshole. If you can really just breathe and let that run through you, our bodies are designed, like, watch animals, right? They're designed to have that stuff move through them. Like the squirrel runs up the tree and it shakes, and then it's all through it. The dog just chased it up the tree. It just had a life death situation, and its nervous system is designed for that energy to go through. Why do we hold on to things, or why is it that things we're talking about, that I'm still talking about how this person said something or other to me, and I'm still complaining to you. I'm still suffering. It's because I keep practicing the images. So if I have the image of my partner as they're selfish and they don't care about me, that's going to stimulate all kinds of, and every time I have that thought, it's just going to stimulate more uncomfortable feelings. But if I have a different image of the image of, oh, she's having feelings and needs, that's a whole different thing in my body, and it's a whole different way of relating to her. So I love that you brought that up, Wilson, and I really bow to any of us who are doing this kind of inner work. Because if we, peace on the planet, yes, it happens externally and it happens internally. Every one of us, as we turn down our violence, it feeds into the morphic field, it feeds into the human consciousness all around the world. Every one of us affects everyone else on this planet. The quantum physics talks about that, the quantum entanglement, every atom's connected to every other atom, all that kind of stuff. We now know from a scientific perspective, that every time I transform violence inside of me, that ripples out into all of humanity. So every time you breathe through that reactivity, you are helping humanity to be a little less violent.
Gio, any questions or comments this evening?
Oh, you call it on me.
You don't have to. I'm just asking if you want to share something.
Um, yeah, I mean, there is a lot that was shared, especially in the beginning. I was kind of more, uh, well, I relate a lot to the evolutionary psychology because I studied, in undergrad, I studied psychology, and then later, I got really interested in evolutionary psychology, probably on undergrad too, and after that, I read a lot about it. So that was something that I thought was interesting, and it's interesting how Steve, that you kind of used that to uh have a better understanding of the nonviolent communication. I think that's really uh well, like a really insightful way to go about it. Um but yeah, I think that was something that was interesting. I guess one question I have, because I'm thinking back to my own past relationships, and I've had experiences where like I consider myself to be a decently like calm person. I feel like I probably get that from my dad. My dad's like very calm, and like I don't really get super emotional. Um, but I guess my question would be like, for somebody who gets very emotional and they have like really strong feelings and they kind of just get very loud and everything. Um, I guess I go like, oh, I know you're feeling this anger and you're feeling this tenseness right now. Um, but dealing with somebody who's like very, very angry, like or gets very emotional, and it's hard to kind of even talk any sense into them or any like rationality, you know. How do you deal with that? And then the other question I guess I would have in addition to that is, I've also had experiences where people just it, it's almost like that they don't want to communicate, you know, they kind of just want to back away, and it's like you want to communicate with them, you want to come to like a mutual agreement, or you want to come to some sort of solution, but they don't really want to work through that with you. They kind of just want to back away from things. So I guess those are like my two questions to you. Like, how do you work in either of those situations?
Yeah. Most people's intensity, in my experience, is because they haven't gotten the empathy that they needed,
Mhm.
right? We come from a culture that if we're upset, what we're taught to do, if we're the kind that's going to be verbalizing stuff, obviously some people just shut down, but we're taught that if you're the kind that's going to be verbalizing, you keep telling the story. My boss is such a jerk. I was 5 minutes late and he got all over my ass. He's late himself sometimes. Right? That what we believe in NVC is that I am wanting, the thing I am most wanting at that time is empathy, which simply means for you to connect to what I'm feeling and my unmet needs. But since I don't even know what I want, I don't even know that I want that. You probably don't know that, no one ever taught you that that's what I want. I just keep complaining. In fact, Marshall used to talk about an aunt that he had who told the same, you know, complained about the same stories for 30 years. And if they knew they were going to be at the party, they would try to like arrange it so that they were there when she wasn't there. Right. So when someone is talking intensely, it's usually because they need empathy. And so to connect to what you think they're, and the feeling is probably about 20% of the connection. The need is really where the bulk of the connection is. So if somebody's, going jackal, that I also may want to connect to their level of intensity. And this is where the art of NVC comes in, too, because yes, and he was such a jerk, and he always right. And so if I'm this person may want me to match their intensity, or they may want me to just listen more. It's hard to know exactly what they want, but the belief in NVC is like what they're saying is, I'm really hurting, I'm really frustrated, I'm really scared, and I'm really needing to be understood. I'm really needing respect, but they're not using any of those words. They're just complaining. And so I might say to Jackal, like, I get it. That really sucked. You really wanted some respect in that situation and care about what was going on for you. I may meet them in that intensity, but I'm not. There's a whole bunch of things that we're taught to do that are not empathy. One is agreement. Yeah, your boss is an asshole, and he should. Right? That's just going to fuel it. Mostly, that's going to fuel things. So that's not empathy. Empathy is also not sympathy. Sympathy is me talking about my feelings. Dude, I'm really pissed off hearing you say that. That I'm getting all worked up just hearing you say that. That's me talking about me. That's what we call sympathy, right? Or else advice. Dude, you know what I think you should do next time is you should, right? That's not empathy. All these things that we're taught to do that are generally not helpful because this person needs empathy. Now, they probably, if they don't know NVC, they're not familiar, they don't want to hear some kind of robotic NVC statement like, are you feeling frustrated and discouraged because you want more respect and care from your boss in the workplace? Like, that's what we call classic NVC, right? Mm-hmm. And what we want, especially with people who aren't familiar with NVC, is to talk street giraffe. Mm-hmm. Marshall called street giraffe, not classic NVC. So street giraffe is like, that sucks, huh? No wonder you got worked up, man. You were just wanting a little respect. All I'm saying is I'm connecting to the person's feelings and to the person's needs. I'm not agreeing with him, the story about the boss, or I'm not giving him advice, blah, 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 blah. Most people, they want connection to their feelings and their needs, and they don't even know it. So that's your response, my response to the first part. I'll pause there, Gio, so you can just reflect on that before I go to the second part.
Yeah, that's all great. The only thing I thought of when you were saying that is, what is your opinion on like saying like calm down? Like I know
people don't like that.
Yeah, I mean that's what I assume is that it's
It's a
probably not the
nice way
greatest.
it's a great way to inflame things.
Okay.
But first of all, I would try not to let myself get. So if Jackal's over here, boss sucks, boss, right? I would interrupt the conversation to bring it back to life before I got so distressed that I yelled, calm down, right? And that's where I would interrupt and say something like, hold on a second, sounds like that was a really tough situation for you, right? Bring it back to the feelings and the needs so that I get that connection going with the person. So back to the other part. What do we do when someone withdraws? So when someone withdraws or someone is quiet, it's one of the loudest things that a person can say. Right? I'm not sure. It's likely that we've all had times in our life when we were so triggered or whatever, we just shut down. And if you think back to that situation, you had intense stuff going on inside, right? So to remember that quiet, silence, withdrawal is a person saying something really deep is going on inside of me. Some really intense feelings are going on, some really intense needs. Now, it may be that the person is not in touch with their feelings, in which case that's a different kind of strategy that I would use than someone who has feelings and is just sitting on them. Because I went through about 18 years of being so disconnected from my feelings. I didn't know what I was feeling hardly ever. And a lot of the times I would withdraw and I just would numb out, blah, blah, blah. Anyhow. So, but if someone is being quiet and I'm wanting to communicate with them, first of all, if I were in my NVC consciousness, I would not try to make them talk. That's an act of violence, to try to make somebody talk when they're not wanting to talk. But I may say something like, sounds like you're really wanting some quiet time, or you're really wanting to just take care of yourself right now. I might try to empathetically guess what's going on for them. And if they didn't respond, it'd be like, then I might say, this is really important to me, and I would like to just come back and revisit this tomorrow, or depending on the situation. I may say in 10 minutes, I may say in an hour, I may say tomorrow, something like that. But I would let them know that this is important to me and that I'm acknowledging that they're wanting to take care of themselves. My experience is if I genuinely empathize with people who are quiet and in the early stages of shutting down, it's because they're needing more of an invitation. They're needing more of a welcome. They're needing more of to be drawn into the conversation. They're shutting down because they're not feeling safe usually. And so to communicate to them that I am really here to create a safe space, which means no criticism, no judgment, no blame, no demand, just wanting to hear each other's hearts. You know, I've had many times where it works where I would say something like, I imagine you have been wanting to say stuff, and that the way that I've been talking, it's been hard for you to say. I'm very confident that I can be quiet and hear what you want to say right now, or something like that. And then they look at me like, are you sure? You know, so inviting people by communicating and presencing ourselves in a way that we let them know that we are able to be receptive and compassionate and empathetic, and that will invite them to speak. Gay and Catherine Hendricks, these couple that wrote a lot of relationship books, they have this great image. They say there's two types of people. There's turtles and hailstorms, and they always seem to find each other. When hailstorm gets anxious, they start hailing faster. And then you did, and you always do it. And why don't you? And when turtle gets scared and anxious, turtle goes inside the shell to protect itself. And they drive each other crazy.
That explains my friend and I really well.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
when we're in a relaxed, open-hearted space, this is the time to talk about these things. Hey, Gio, I noticed that, in the way that we relate, sometimes I really start picking up steam, and it seems like you seem to kind of like start closing down. And I would really like it if you would let me know as soon as you start to notice if I'm picking up steam like that, and you're just beginning to notice that, if you'd let me know. And that would really be helpful to me, because I guess I just lose awareness of what's going on. And I don't want to like be ramroding our conversation. And so if you would just put your hand up and say, dude, need a timeout, or something like that, I'll know. Right? So we make agreements while we're in these relaxed, open-hearted spaces about how we want to relate when things get tense. You don't wait until shit blows up and then try to deal with it. I mean, that's going to happen here, of course, sometimes. But to acknowledge these patterns and try to make agreements ahead of time. So I'm curious what's going on for you, Gio, about the second part about when people are more withdrawn.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all makes sense. I guess my only other question, I don't want to push on too long here, but uh, when you're bringing up something that you're noticing, like in a relationship, um, what's the best way to bring it up? Because I know it's probably not like criticizing them or being like, "Oh, you did this, you did that." Is it just kind of saying like, "This is how I've been feeling, and this is something I've noticed," kind of using that kind of language, or
Can you give an example that we can work with?
um. I guess an example would be like, oh, I mean, I'm just coming up with an example in my head, but
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
somebody makes breakfast every morning and they kind of have stopped, you
Okay.
know, and like that was kind of something that you enjoyed or you liked. Or maybe like somebody sends like a good morning text and they kind of stop doing that. So I don't know, something like that, I
Sure,
guess.
sure. Well, first of all, there's this guideline that exists. It came out of the Gottman Institute originally, but it's been research that's been verified over and over again, which is that for long-term intimate relationships to thrive, you need to have a minimum of 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative interaction. Because the human mind is like Velcro for negative experiences. Oh, he said that I was selfish. Oh, and it sticks and it has a big impact. And we're Teflon for positive interactions. Dude, I really love the way that I love that. I love the omelet you made me this morning. Boing, boing, right? Maybe it registered, maybe it stuck for 2 seconds, but it's not like the Velcro of like, oh my God. Okay, so because the human mind is like that, it's called the negativity bias. You have to have 5 positives for every 1 negative. So the point that I'm bringing this up the reason I'm bringing this up is that giving and receiving constructive criticism, the ability for that to be constructive is dependent upon how much positive interactions you're having with that person. If that's the only thing I say to you all day today is, how come you've quit making breakfast for me? That's not likely to go well. But if we've already had 5 to 10 positive interactions, and that doesn't mean, like I presented you some kind of a birthday gift or something. It can be any kind of simple positive interaction, like, God, Gio, did you see the lilac bush outside? I just went outside. The lilac bush is really on fire with blue, man. I love it. Or, boy, I'm so glad that I worked out yesterday because I'm just feeling better. How are you feeling? Or, wow, I love the way you look in that shirt, or whatever. Like, if we have a rich flow of positive interactions, then when I drop in like, hey, Gio, I'm noticing that you haven't been making breakfast for me. You just getting tired of it, or what's going on? I kind of miss it. See, then all of a sudden it's just boink. It's just a little heart share amidst a sea of plenty. And yes, of course, I do it without any energy of judgment, criticism, blame, demand, or anything like that. Of course, that's the energy that I would want to say. It would be free of all of that. It would just be curiosity and care for the other person and care for my own needs.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
You want to say something, Gio?
No, I was just gonna say, that's all. That's all I
Yeah.
wanted to.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody, for
Thank you
such
for your
good
question.
questions. Yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
such good questions. And Steve, do you want to share any closing thoughts? Maybe if you want to share any ways people can plug in more with what you're doing.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a 4-level curriculum, and I call it the relationship curriculum, REAL, because of the organization that me and my friends started. We called the Real Center, Relationship Embodiment Awakened Living. The relationship curriculum. And so next week I'm starting a round of Relationship 101. And I guess I could put that in the chat.
Sure. I'll put it in the when we put it up on YouTube and Spotify and all that, I'll put a link in there too.
Okay, great. Let's see, TRC. Chat. Whoops.
Therealcenter.org, right?
There. Finally, I got it in there without any extra words. the first, there we go. Therealcenter.org. Yes. I was laughing because I said chat, and you'll see how chat got in there in the first one. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love for you, if this kind of stuff interests you, I'd love to have you join me on this journey. And I offer all my classes. I mean, I have a set suggested rate, but I offer all my classes on a by donation basis. So you or anybody you know wants to take the classes, I am all about, getting the word out. It's my life purpose. It's my love. Just please come and join me if you're interested in this. also get to meet a lot of really cool people. I also have me and some friends put on a thing in the summer called Compassion Camp. And it's a School of Integrated Living or something like that. Brian, would you put that one? Actually, I know how to find it.
How many years have you done Compassion Camp now? Is it like 5?
This is our 8th, I think.
Oh, okay. And that's people coming together for several days together in North Carolina at Earth Haven. Is it at Earth Haven?
Yes. There you go. Yes, we meet at our eco village outside of Asheville here. It's a 4-day event. What I love about it is that we are building a teaching learning community. So instead of bringing in experts and we all sit around and learn from the experts, we use a thing called open space process, where everybody who comes who wants to teach gets to offer whatever it is. We vote on it, so not everybody's thing gets chosen, but we have about, I don't know, 30 breakout sessions or 40 breakout sessions throughout the 4 days. And we teach and we learn from each other. And then we do a lot of connecting stuff, singing and movement. They have great trails, and Earth Haven is a really beautiful nature place as well. So, and then that's in August. And then in June, we're having a 1-day event called Compassion Day Camp. That's June 21st.
Nice.
Beautiful. How can they be on get on my email list, Brian? How can we, if they want to be on my email list, how do we handle
That's a question for you, I think. I don't know how they get on your email list.
Well, I mean, what I mean by that is like some hosts are particular about how not just giving out people's email addresses and all that.
Yeah.
I know that's what I'll do is I'll put here, I will give you all my email address.
Yeah, they can email you and then then you'll have their email address.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, Steve, thank you so much for all the work you've done, all the years, all the wisdom you've acquired, all the people you've helped and supported, learn how to really see each other and hear each other and connect with each other in a deep way. One of the things that I find myself telling people a lot is I feel like what you're doing is the foundational component because the communication is the key to everything else. All the things we want to do, all the things we want to create, all the places we want to go together, all the amazing things we want to, manifest in the world, we have to be able to communicate with each other and really be able to feel connected and trust and feel heard and feel seen and understood and listened to do that. So I'm really grateful for you, for your friendship, for your presence in my life and Annie, and have you supported us over the years. And I'm excited for you to support new people that are just being introduced to your work as well. So thank you.
Thank
Thanks a
you
lot,
Very much.
Steve.
Thank you.
Do you have
bet.
any closing words of wisdom or inspiration for us to bring us out to the
Thank you for asking. I love to close with back in the 80s, there was this video called The Global Brain by Peter Russell.
Oh yeah.
It was a
I know Peter
classic.
Russell.
It was a classic.
I actually had him way back in the day. I actually had him on a podcast that I was doing or a radio show. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
love that.
that was a good book.
And so he was such a breakthrough guy back then. Anyhow, he did this video called The Global Brain, and he ended it with this poem or prose from this play called A Sleep of Prisoners by Christopher Fry. And I changed it just a little bit, but I'm going to say it basically how I learned it from Peter Russell. The human heart can go the length of God. Dark and cold it may be, but this is no winter now. The frozen misery of centuries cracks, breaks, begins to move. The thunder is the thunder of the flows, the thaw, the flood, and the upstart spring. Thank God our time is now when wrong comes up to meet us everywhere, never to leave until we take the greatest stride of soul humans have ever taken. Affairs are now soul size. The enterprise is exploration into God. But where are you making for? It takes so many years to wake, but let us wake for Gaia's sake.
Beautiful. Thank you,
Pleasure
Steve.
being with you all
Thank you,
tonight.
everybody.
Oh,
Thank you.
Wishing you
Blessings
a
on your
beautiful now.
journey, and I hope our paths cross again. And Brian, thank you for our friendship over all these years, and blessings on your great work too.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks,
Good night,
everybody.
folks.